Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us tonight for our very first Custom Home Masterclass. We're really happy to have you here tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about how to build a custom home in Calgary. There's so many different steps, but I promise you by the time you're done tonight's masterclass, you're going to have all of the key steps to go away and start your project very successfully and very confidently. My name is Yuen, and I'm the president and founder of Phase 1 Design. What I'll be talking about tonight is the 8-step planning process for your custom home.
Hi there, I'm Thomas Ferianec with NewInfills.ca, and we're going to be talking about how you're going to find that perfect lot.
Hello, my name is Pedro Ocana with Sunset Homes. Today we're going through the process of building your custom home and most importantly, the cost.
Alright, so here's what the format's going to look like. So we're going to be doing a brief presentation. It's going to be roughly about 15 to 20 minutes long. And then what's going to happen is at the end, we're going to be doing a live Q&A. So if you happen to have a question while we're going through the presentation, just feel free to type it out. And we'll be addressing these at the end. So starting us off tonight is Thomas. Thomas, take it away.
Thanks, Kathy. So my name's Thomas Ferianec. I run a real estate team called the Urban Upgrade Real Estate Team. I'm a licensed realtor with Remax House of Real Estate, and we work with builders and developers, and we're infill specialists. You might be familiar with my website, NewInfills.ca. We have excellent content on there with lots of good information for people to look into. So what I wanted to talk about was the steps involved in finding that perfect lot. Items that we're going to be covering are probably one of the biggest questions that I do get, which is now a good time to buy? Other topics that I think are going to be very useful to you are what to look out for when you are searching for that perfect lot. And then we're going to cover some tips and tricks on how to find that perfect lot. And then last but not least, when it comes to actually buying that lot, some good ideas for you to utilize when you're making that offer so that you do get that lot that you're looking for. So the first question is now a good time to buy? In short, I would say yes, it is. The reality is, if you've been looking for a while, then you know that the perfect lot does take time to find. And more recently, we're finding that there actually is more choice out there than we have had in previous years. One of the questions that does come up is, if the market is a little bit slower, a little bit softer, our price is going to decline. And although there might be a little bit of variation in pricing over the coming months or even the coming year, the reality is they're not likely to decline much because Calgary's pace of new infill development is quite active. Also, one thing to remember is when you are in a bit of a softer or slower market, that is the best environment to be negotiating your offer. With respect to sourcing the lot, the most important thing to do is cast a wide net. So what we do recommend is, for one, make sure you set up on an auto search. If you're working with a realtor, they can set that up for you. And the key there is to have real-time access to inventory that is coming on the market. Again, if you've been looking for a while, you'll know that sometimes it's hard to find a lot just because they don't seem to come up. Well, the reality is they do change hands, but they often change hands privately. And that, again, could happen within the realtor network or even outside of it. The other tip that I like to share with people is don't hesitate to get out there and network with people. If you have a community that you're really excited to move into, and you're part of that community somehow, whether it's through the school system or people that live there, don't hesitate to ask if they know anybody who might be selling, because again, if you can stumble across that lot and do a private sale, that's to your benefit. Alternatively, it doesn't hurt to put a message out there on social media and say, hey, I'm looking to move into this neighborhood. Does anybody know of anything coming up? And last but not least, I really do encourage talking to the community specialists. So those are the realtors that are very active in the area. They usually have a line on properties that are coming up before the general market. So with respect to finding that lot, a couple of things to look out for while you are searching is think of this investment as a long-term decision. When you buy your property, you might not realize that several years down the road, that property and the surroundings with it will change. A good example is the trees around you. They're going to mature over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and the landscaping will change. And it's not just your landscaping, but it's the landscaping to the homes behind you and to the homes across the street from you. What that can impact is what your views are. So if you have a specific view that you're really keen on and there's some trees growing that will eventually impede that view, it's going to be important for you to be conscious of that. Also, be mindful of the fact that the neighbors that are currently there may not be there in the future, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. Other things that are kind of on a more macro scale that could impact that long-term decision is the zoning changing. If the zoning changes around you, that could mean that there are buildings being built around you that you're not aware of. New development will change things, and then also local traffic flow might change. So you may have a lot more cars on the street as the city densifies. When it comes to buying that perfect lot, ideally what you want to do is you want to win an offer when you're making one. My rule of thumb there is act fast, be realistic, and then play to win. And what that means is, first of all, get out there, get pre-qualified, and know what your budget is for purchasing a lot. Realistically, if you are stepping into that qualification stage later on, you may actually miss out on an opportunity, or you may be chasing a property that you might not be able to fit into your budget. Also, I encourage that you educate yourself on values. That way, if a lot comes up that you're very keen on, you can move on it quickly because you feel comfortable with what properties are worth. If a property does come up that you want to offer on and it is absolutely perfect and it looks like it's priced incredibly well, be mindful of the fact that there might be other buyers out there that have the same idea. So you want to make sure your offer is one where you're going to win. And then last but not least, again, I mentioned it before, get help from a real estate professional. They know the values, they know what's happening in the market, and they know what your chances of success are going to be. They'll also be able to guide you with respect to how to offer so that, again, you could win. I'd like to thank you for your time. Please don't hesitate to reach out anytime. My email's on the screen, thomas@urbanupgrade.ca. My cell phone number is there as well. Again, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to help, and hopefully this has been helpful for you. I'm going to turn it over to Kathy.
All right. Thanks, Thomas. So what I'm going to be talking about tonight is the 8-step planning process. Usually when somebody wakes up and decides, hey, I'm going to build a custom home, there are so many different steps and it's so confusing for most people to understand where to even start. Me, I actually like to simplify things. So what I am going to walk you through today is an 8-step planning process that is going to simplify everything for everybody watching this tonight. And by the time you are done watching this, you're going to know exactly the steps to follow to be able to successfully get into construction. So let's get started. So first and foremost, know your budget. I know that sounds really, really obvious, but what a lot of people do is they start jumping into the design, or they go and try to buy land, or they go and try to talk to builders. Whatever it is, before you do anything, you need to know what your budget is. Now, what I like to do is call this budget check number 1. The reason why it's called budget check number 1 is for a few different reasons. First and foremost, everybody, when they talk about budgeting, they always want to get a budget to the dollar, or that's what they're expecting anyways. So that at this point is not realistic because you do not have design, you don't have a set of plans, some of you don't even know what kind of land you're building on. But what you want to know is what is that budget range that you are going to be within. So whatever that looks like, you need to be comfortable with it. A really good exercise is to talk to experts. So the experts out there, actually there's 3 of us sitting here tonight, but 3 really great resources to talk to are a realtor to find out what is the value of the land in the area that you're looking in, a designer for reasons I'll go into shortly, just in terms of what it is that you can build, because that will directly tie to your budget, as well as a builder for obvious reasons. The builder is going to understand what the cost of building is. When you're actually out there and talking to all these different people, make sure you're not just going for the lowest price. Obviously, we all want a great deal, but you can get yourself into trouble later if you do that. So that's step 1, know your initial budget. Step number 2, know what you can build. So what this speaks to is what you can actually physically build on your site. Regardless of what you actually want to build, in the city of Calgary, MD Rockview, MD Foothills, every single municipality has what's called a land use bylaw. What's a land use bylaw? Well, I'm not going to get into the details because I will make you all fall asleep. But what I will tell you is that the land use bylaw will dictate what you can actually build on your site. So here's a list. I'm not going to go through all this in the interest of time. But as you can see, it's a very extensive list that talks about what you can actually build. So let's just say you want to build a 3,000 square foot house. Well, after looking at the land use bylaw, you might find out that you can actually only build 2,000 square feet, which obviously you want to find out at the very beginning before you even go any further. So that's just one of many examples. The land use bylaw is going to be very much related to your budget as well, which we already touched upon. So what the city requires and will let you do, plus what you actually want to build, will equal your budget, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail here later. So how do you do this? There's a few different ways I can share with you tonight. So first and foremost, you can call, if you're in the city of Calgary, there's the number right there. You can call the city. You can go and visit City Hall on your own. If you really love detail, you can definitely attempt to read the land use bylaw. I actually should cross this out. I actually do not recommend that at all, but technically it's an option. Or if you'd like, what we can do, you can shoot me an email and we can do a complimentary site assessment so that you know exactly what it is that you can build. Step 3, explore and document what you want. So what this means is to actually go out there and figure out what it is that you like and what you want. It's kind of like a wish list. So there's lots of different ways to do this. You can sit down and literally start making a list. I'm going to share a few little tips and tricks here with you tonight. And literally you can go do this right after this presentation tonight. Everyone's, I'm sure, is probably familiar with Pinterest. Pinterest is one of my favorite online resources for many reasons. A couple of things I will just point out here is they have a fantastic search option. Now, if you look at the bottom, Pinterest is actually quite smart. Their algorithm will actually show you more ideas. So if you type in modern farmhouse, it's going to show you literally hundreds, if not thousands. I've never scrolled down all the way to the bottom of Pinterest. I don't think anyone has. But anyways, there is a little bar down at the bottom that says more ideas. So it'll just keep feeding you and feeding you, so you can get lost in here for hours. Instagram is another one of my favorites. For those who are not 100% familiar with Instagram, you can actually go in there and start following specific hashtags. So some of my favorites that I like to follow, as an example, are hashtag Calgary Custom Homes, hashtag Custom Homes, and there's a whole bunch you can explore. You can also, if you'd like, check out our Instagram feed. So we're at Phase 1 Design. I've provided this here for everyone. We actually do a post almost on a daily basis that actually shows some of the homes that we've done in Calgary specifically. So if you want to get some inspiration of what you can actually do on a lot, that's a great spot to start. Step 4, develop and finalize your design. So this basically is when you will actually sit down and work with your designer to actually finish developing and finalizing your design. So all of the stuff that you've done in advance in step 3, what your designer is going to do is take all this information and put it all together. I'm just kind of flipping through some slides here. As you can see a developed floor plan that's going from sketch format to a more developed floor plan. And now you can see this gorgeous rendering where you can basically see it transform from like those little hand sketches that you first saw to this gorgeous rendering that you now see on the screen. So that's step 4. It's actually quite a fun process, and I'm sure everybody will enjoy it once they start. Step 5, finalize your budget. So budget we already talked about. Step 5 is actually finalizing your budget. What does that look like? So this is actually similar but different to budget check number 1. So your budget check number 2 is when you actually take your final design and then you will actually go back to the builder. The builder is going to now be able to put some numbers around that and actually finalize what your actual budget looks like. Now when that budget comes back, any deviation from your initial budget, as long as your initial budget was realistic, is going to be resolved through just little tiny design adjustments. So this process should involve both the designer and the builder. Now once that's finished, you can move on to step 6, which is securing your development permit. Your development permit is one of 2 permits that you actually need within your process. So I'm not going to deep dive into that tonight, but just know that you are going to need something called the development permit, and know that it's going to take anywhere from 3 weeks to 12 weeks, just depending on what type of permit you need. Step 7, almost there. So step 7 is where you actually finalize your technical details. So by technical details, I'm not going to bore you guys to tears, But what I will say is the technical details that I'm referring to are things like your structural engineering, your energy modeling, your joist design, your roof truss design, and basically all these different consultants are going to take the architectural drawings and put this package together, because this is what the city needs for step 8. Step 8 is securing your building permit. And this is a really exciting time, because literally the day that you get your building permit, you can walk out that day and literally start construction if you really wanted to. So this is a great segue to pass the floor over to my friend Pedro, and he is going to talk about construction.
Thank you, Kathy. So once again, Pedro Ocana, Sons and Homes. Now, to get started, we're going to go through a few steps on the construction side of things. In regards to how to communicate with us, and the first set of communication back and forth usually is through a phone call or an email. From there, we'll just go through a series of questions that we have on our questionnaire, which you can see right here. In there, we're gonna go through obviously the location, your name, phone number. We're gonna start with the kind of home that you're going to be building. So it's a single, a duplex, triplex, fourplex, and so on. The size, the style of the house is a traditional, modern, transitional. It's a bungalow, it's a 2-story, and so on. Some of the building envelope questions in terms of the foundation type, the exterior finishing, mechanical systems, and so on, interiors. We're gonna go through type of hardwood, type of tops, kitchen cabinets, the kind of appliances that you will look at. In the basement, what kind of flooring, garage is a 2 or 3. Do we want a legal suite, which is nowadays is being applied for a lot as well. Mm-hmm. And once again, we're just gonna go through the budgets. We need a minimum and a maximum budget that you want to allocate to this construction, not including the piece of land that we already talk about. If you have financing, and as well the expected construction starting date, which is gonna, even though Kathy mentioned it before, is anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks to 12 weeks for the process from beginning to end in terms of design and permitting, or just for the
no,
permit.
that was just for the permits.
Yeah,
just for the permits.
For the permit
Yes.
process. So it's just again a reality check in terms of scheduling and how we can approach this construction. Now from there, and based on the questionnaire, we are going through, we call it a class 3 estimate. What is a class 3 is just a budget estimation that is based on past projects for the last 2 or 3 years. We have there is the class 3 is 20 to 30% off the budget based on the questions that, or the answers that we get from the questionnaire. Now we are going to go through a class 3 and subsequent class 2 estimate that we build for a client, which we are in construction right now. He wanted to go through, or he wanted to build a single home, 2-story, 3,200 square feet with a basement developed of about 1,360 square foot. An ICF foundation is an insulated concrete form with a 412 roof. And the estimated duration for this project for construction from foundation pour until the move-in was about 8 months. And then we have the builder's fee and the contingency. Now, based on all the specifications and the answers that this client gave us, we ended up at this amount on the screen. Now, this will be very specific on and based on if we have drawings or not, for example. One of the things that we're gonna go during the class 3 presentation is, do you have an architect? Do you have drawings or not? Because that will create a different kind of budget. Because if we have drawings, we know pretty much that we can just jump into a class 2, which is gonna be 10 to 12% of the final budget. Because if the blueprints are good enough that we can read all the specifications and the construction details, then based on all the previous construction that we have done along the previous years, we can give you a very, very good estimate based on the soft and hard costs. This is only on the items that we have control on, which will be all the way up to the drywall stage. So rough things are going to be included in there. And then obviously there is an amount of money that the clients can play with, which will be all the flooring and the kitchen cabinetry and so on that goes in the specific for this home. From there, and if all the selections are complete, then we can just move to a class 1 estimate, which is a 2% off the final budget, and it's pretty much the cost of the construction. Now, because everybody is waiting for that, let's just move to what is the cost per square footage.
What everybody wants to know.
Yeah. So now, based on our historical data for the last 2 or 3 years and the results that we have for the last 4 or 5 years on the construction of in Calgary, for the inner city, we go anywhere from $250 to $350 a square feet. Now, it's a big range, and it can go lower, but also can go higher. All depends on the location, the specifications, the design, and so on. It depends on the location as well. So Thomas is going to be involved in there. We're going to have Kathy just giving the input as well. And so just with that in mind, we can just move to the next stage of this presentation.
Thank you so much for joining us, everybody, tonight for the presentation part of our webinar. So now we're going to roll into the next stage, which is basically just answering all the Q&As that have been coming through to that email that you've seen on the screen. So what we're going to do on this part is just select a handful of questions that we think are most relevant. There's a whole bunch of them rolling in right now. So we may or may not get to every single question at this exact moment, but just know that we will answer each and every single one. So please continue to send your questions through and we will get back to you. So let's start with the first question. How long does it take to build a new home in Calgary? This is actually a perfect question for all three of us because the time frame is obviously very important. So, and it involves all three portions of the process. So why don't we start from the top with Thomas?
Okay, so how long does it take? I guess realistically, if you're looking for a lot, I've seen people who can make a decision within 30 days and find that perfect property. But I've also heard of people who can take 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, even a couple of years to find the perfect lot. So it really comes down to, I guess, how picky you are and what your budget is and have you found exactly what you're looking for. But then once you do actually find that one that you're ready to put in an offer on, you might have some conditions on your offer. That doesn't take long. It's about a week or two for the most part. And then when you have a possession date in there, you might do 30, 60, 90, 120 days. So that would be something you'd want to add onto your timeline.
All right, and very similar to finding land, design and permits are very dependent on every single project. So the one thing that I will say is regardless of your project or what permit or type of design that you're going to be doing, just make sure that you allow a lot of time. More time is always better than less time for obvious reasons. Design, again, depends on you as the homeowner. So design on average, we always like to recommend about 2 to 3 months depending on your availability to come to meetings and how fast you are at making decisions. Permits are very, very specific to the project. So in the city of Calgary, it can be as quick as anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, and it can be as long as 3 to 4 months. So all in total, we always like to recommend roughly about 6 months for the design and permitting process. But again, the huge message I want to send to everybody out there tonight is to make sure that you know exactly what that timeline looks like for your project. Because again, it's very different and very specific depending on your project.
Yeah, so in terms of a construction, so after the DP is approved, the development permit, we will require the building permit drawings. That will take another week or so by the architects to finalize. Then we'll just go to details in terms of engineering, joists and truss layouts, energy modeling. And as soon as we have that, which is a couple of weeks, we can apply for the building permit. Now, the building permit can take a week or two, but as soon as we apply, pretty much the next day, we get a partial, which we can use to have the demo excavation foundation and up to the first floor, subfloor. And that will take us a couple of weeks, which is when we get the final BP release. Now, from there, and depending on the location, the size of your home, the community where we're building, it will take anywhere from 8 to 10 months. But we have seen construction take 14, 12 months, depending on the size as well. No? So if you're talking about over 4,500 square feet, it will take over 12 to 14 months. And under that, so 2,800 square feet is about 8 to 10 months.
All right, so in the spirit of keeping things simple, let's just summarize exactly what the timeframes should be for somebody starting the process. Thomas?
Okay, so if you're not looking for anything that's overly specific, you could probably find a great lot in about 3 to 6 months.
For design and permits, again, very dependent on the project, but it can be as quick as 3 months, as long as 6 months.
Yeah, and again, for construction, regular size home, 20 to 2,400 square feet is 8 months, and then up to a year for bigger 4,500 square feet.
All right, that was an awesome question about timeline. So thank you for that. We're gonna roll into our next question. So I've noticed build costs can vary widely, and I'm just wondering if you could expand on how much it actually costs to build. I think this is a perfect question for Pedro to answer. Pedro?
Yeah, this is so wide. As we explained before, we can go anywhere from 250 to 350 square foot, but we can go lower than that, higher than that. All depends on the specifications and selections, because again, this is a custom home build. Depends on the location, what you like, what do you want to have in the house. You're gonna go for ICF foundation or just regular creep foundation? Are we gonna have different kind of stucco? What are the kind of flooring that we have, cabinetry, and so on. So it is very specific on the selections. No, so for us to help you, it will be important to have Pinterest, house account, all your Instagram, just to take a look at what areas that you like. Just maybe do a couple of walkthroughs on a few of our constructions, just browse through pictures. And obviously the most important thing is that we do have historical data from past constructions, and we can always play with that at the office. Thomas, anything?
Just what I've noticed in the past as well, because we've had many clients that have commented that they get different numbers from different builders. And I guess my bit of advice there would be to really be clear on what that builder is quoting you on, what is included in that budget, because sometimes you have soft costs, sometimes you don't, sometimes you have demolition, sometimes you have asbestos, sometimes you have contingencies, and all these things can add up pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. We get that question a lot too. I think that's one of like our most common questions we get, where obviously, starting out in the process, you're out there talking to a lot of different people, getting a lot of different information. So one piece of advice I always like to give to our clients working with them at the beginning is, just like Thomas alluded to, if you're out there, whether it's starting your Pinterest account or your Instagram account and just collecting all the data, just be very clear in terms of detail of your interior finishings that you like, and you don't have to get like overly analytical about it. Literally just like pin a whole bunch of photos that you like, both for the inside and the outside as well, exteriors that you love. That's going to drive costs in terms of like complexity of roof lines and so many different factors. What you might think is just a really simple picture is actually going to give someone like Pedro a really, really clear idea of what your expectations are for the budget and for the finish.
Yeah, for sure. And imagine if you don't have design, it is hard to get a number down, no? But if you have a little bit of design, or at least a draft, and add it with pictures, then we can actually help. It can actually help us just define it. And obviously it depends on the specifications as well, because a builder can just do it for $200 square foot, but what is included? No, exactly what Thomas alluded to. So
included,
it is hard, but the more information you give to your builder, the more accurate your estimate will be.
And I just want to add one final thing too. Again, don't expect at this point in time, you're not going to get like a super to the dollar budget. Expect a range. That's really, really normal. If a builder is able to give a range, and just as long as you're comfortable with the low and the high ends of the range, that is really, really powerful. And just don't get paralyzed by like not knowing to the dollar budget numbers at this early stage in the game. All right. So let's go to our next question. Is it better to have my lot first or pick a builder first? Okay, this is a great question. To be honest, there's not really a right or wrong answer to this question. We actually get this question quite a bit, right? So, so really, it's going to depend on the individual scenario. So I think like all three parties sitting here tonight can speak towards this. It is an important question to wrap your head around. So I guess the best way to address this question would just to hear the different perspectives around the table. Who wants to take a stab?
Okay, how about I start out? So with respect to picking your lot first or picking the builder first, I think the reality is if you, and this is from my own experience, if you know what you want to achieve, so you want to build this size of home in roughly this type of location, talking with us at the beginning will be super helpful because, again, if you say, I'm interested in this particular lot, this is what I'm thinking of building, I can actually give you a pretty good opinion of whether that is the highest and best use of the property. Because realistically, I'm sure you've all heard the adage of being the biggest house on the block. So you want to be mindful of the fact that whatever you're wanting to build will ideally fit in to the location. And that's going to give you the best long-term investment protection. So yeah, that's kind of been our experience with it. So again, no right or wrong answer, but it's definitely a good way to look at it is get that opinion of whether it fits what you want to do. Kathy, what are your thoughts?
So I think there's not really like a right or wrong answer to this question. I think the message here really is to engage all the relevant parties early on in the process. So, the question here reads to pick a builder first. Well, obviously if you're looking at lots, you're already working with a realtor. Picking a builder implies that you're actually, formally committing to that builder. You don't actually need to formally commit to the builder that early on in the process. But what is really good is just to engage the builder, like, figure out who it is that you are enjoying your conversations with. And if they know that you're actually out there looking for a lot, when you find that lot that you're really, really excited about, reach out to the builder and, get them to give them get them to give you their opinion of that particular lot. Another thing I will add is I know we found a lot of success in clients reaching out to us during this point in the process as well. Obviously, someone like Thomas is going to have the expertise on the realty side in terms of like highest and best use. Someone like Pedro as a custom home builder is going to have a lot of input in terms of like the cost and the constructability. But residential building designers such as myself is going to have a lot of input in terms of what you can actually build on the property and make sure you can actually get it approved. So very often we'll work with a client where they say, hey, I want to build A, B, C. And then when we look at that lot, we're like, oh my goodness, that is going to be very challenging. So obviously you don't want to get yourself in that scenario. So it's really important to engage somebody who is familiar with zoning bylaws and the implications that it may potentially have for your project. So early on. So yeah, again, just to summarize, the three parties around the table here, those are the types of people you want to engage early on during this process. Pedro, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so a couple examples of why it's important to contact or have your builder involved during the selection of the lot. We have had issues where we have city trees, for example, in the property, and it's very challenging to work around those, especially when you go down to the city and ask for the cost or the price of these trees. We have found some trees that cost just like $300, for example, and it's easy to move them to a different location, so it's not that we kill them. But there's some that are $30,000 or $35,000, and they're really, really hard to move them because the roots are so spread out on the pavement as well. So it's really, really difficult. For example, if you have to do a water and sewer reconnection, the way to go there is just with directional drilling. So obviously this is a number of costs that you have to keep in mind as well. Directional drilling can go anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000, and it's just for the new water and sewer reconnection. No? For example, if you're going to keep your garage in place while the construction is going on, and then you have more trees in the front, so it's very challenging, and we need a lot of planning around it because we need to bring an excavator somewhere, and having to turn into a back alley it's been very difficult when we had to keep these garages. So there is economical decisions there as well. I know some clients would like to save these garages and just bet $25,000, $35,000 on this garage construction. Sometimes is more costly just due to the challenges of bringing the machinery into these lots. So it's important for us as well to take a look, not just on the constructability side of things, but in the logistics as well. No?
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, the reality is if you select your lot first, your design may have to change to suit that lot because there are some unforeseen variables that just weren't accounted for. Whereas if you bring in your specialists who can give you feedback prior to committing to that lot, well, at least you can decide if that was the right choice or if you should maybe look for an alternative option.
All right. Thanks so much for that last question. That was a really, really good question. In the interest of time, I think we're just looking at the clock here. We're going to just get wrapped up here on the presentation. So again, thank you to everybody, I should say, for joining us tonight. It was great. I see that there was a lot of other questions that came through here via email. So thanks so much for everybody emailing those through to us. Just know that if we did not get to your question in this particular presentation, we will get back to each and every single one of you. And if you do still have a question after this presentation, feel free to keep them coming. And like I said, we will get back to each and every single person that has emailed us a question. So in the spirit of just wrapping everything up, we're just going to have a final note from each one of our three speakers. So Thomas, want to take it from the top?
Yeah, thank you for listening in. Hopefully we were able to add some value. With respect to, again, finding that perfect lot, if you are not on any kind of an auto search and you would like to be placed on one, please don't hesitate to reach out to me and we'll get you set up on that so that you're getting real-time information on properties that are coming up. And then on top of that, we actually deal with a lot of off-market land. So if you are looking for something special and you're having a hard time finding it, do not hesitate to reach out and we will definitely get that to you. My information is on the screen. Thanks.
And for those of you out there who are just starting this 8-step planning process or kind of in the beginning stages, irregardless of where you're at in that process, for everyone joining us tonight, my information is on the screen. And what we can do is we can jump on a 30-minute video call, and I am more than happy to take a look at your project, whether or not you have land yet. If you do, I can run a zoning bylaw review and just kind of giving you some guidance in terms of how to kind of take your project through that 8-step planning process, regardless, again, of where you're at. So my information is on the screen and looking forward to hearing from you.
And once again, thanks very much for your time. Just reach out to us. We can just do a quick run through and create a class 3 estimate for you based on your selections. We can just send you a questionnaire with all the information that we require to create this class 3 estimate, and then we can spend some time together and play with our spreadsheet, which has a lot of historical data from past construction on in the Calgary area. So once again, thanks very much for being here with us.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Have a great night.
Bye-bye.